Hello and welcome back, my gentle and of course very modern apes. I'm very tired this week. Before we get started today, I want to clue you in on where I'm at. I like to keep you guys in the loop as far as my academic journey because it impacts our YouTube time together. Most of you know this, but I'm a third-year PhD student, and I'm taking one of my last classes that goes towards my coursework, and it just so happens to be gross anatomy. So this is an enormous workload. This is an enormous workload of a class. There is so much that goes into this. The class is basically just like know everything in the human body, and there's a lot of stuff in there. I'm spending upwards of several hours a day studying for this class. I'm doing my best. A lot of Saturdays, I'm driving to go work with the cadavers at the location where we go and do our lab work. And so I've not had a ton of time to do YouTube stuff in general. I would have some if it weren't for my comps. Comps are a series of multi-day exams that you have to take once you're done with your course load in your PhD program here at my university. It's basically like I send a giant list of papers to my advisor, and then they create like a test that is rooted in all of those papers. When I say a bunch of papers, I mean like over 200 papers. And then that test, after I do the written test, which is several days, has like an oral component. So you have to come in and defend your answers verbally. Some of you might remember me bringing the comps up earlier this year. I was supposed to take them in the summer, but then I got that fieldwork opportunity. Yeah, I know the fieldwork video's not out yet. That's also on my plate right now. But I was supposed to take them, got the fieldwork opportunity, pushed them, and so now I'm taking them alongside my gross anatomy class, and it's a lot. Fortunately, comps are on your dissertation topics, so I'm at least not in the dark with them. I know a lot about what I'm studying right now. It's sexual dimorphism and Miocene apes and things of that nature, but it's still a lot, especially alongside gross anatomy. So add on top of that the fact that the AABA abstracts are due here in like 2 weeks, and I have to do that, and add on top of that personal obligations as well as YouTube. And what I'm trying to say is,
I would give the pain a 10.
It's a lot. Fortunately, I am very powerful mentally and physically, and so I can handle this. I've got my support systems in place. Spouse, family, friends, they all know that I'm buckling down right now and that this is a time for focus. I'm eating right and getting plenty of sleep and also working out. I have a great spot in the forest to tear off all my clothes and run to wail at the moon, to blow off a little steam from the crushing weight of existence. What I'm saying is, you're gonna get a lot of low quality content from me over the next several weeks. Not that any of you mind, since my second highest effort video on this channel is still being bodied by whatever this was. Hi everybody, just interjecting to say that actually, this is a few weeks later, and that video did end up popping off. I'm very happy to see it. You can and probably should still go watch it though, so do that if you haven't already. Please watch my mass extinction video. It's very dramatic. You'll like it, I think. In the spirit of keeping things low effort during the month of October, one of my favorite months that I'm going to be spending with my nose in the books, I figured we would go to one of the most low-hanging fruit type sources for young earth creationist content of all time. No, it's not standing for truth. Of course, I'm talking about Eric Hovind's Twitter account. Lately, Eric Hovind has been treating Twitter as if it's TikTok and posting these little mini videos that debunk evolution. I'm not sure if he actually has a TikTok account that he also like cross-posts these to, or if they also show up on YouTube, but the videos themselves are very bad. Personally, I tend to score young earth creationist content by a few different criteria, right? There's obviously the accuracy criteria, and a young earth creationist video is never going to get 100% on that, but they can approach it. There are young earth creationist videos that are like light creationism that get a lot of information right and like a smaller portion of it wrong. So accuracy is like basically a 0 for Eric's content here. Second is going to be laziness. Is the argument new or is it recycled from the 1970s? Eric is also going to get like a 0 here, maybe like a 2 out of 100. And then lastly is going to be production value. How much effort was actually put into the presentation of the information, which is also going to be about a 0 for Eric's videos. This is really weird to me because his Creation Today videos have really high production value. The other two, they also score very low on, but the production value is usually at least passable. Not so for these TikTok Twitter videos. So here we begin with our first video. Evolution didn't work on this crab emoji, laughing face emoji, and that is of course exactly what you see on the screen, which is not fitted to the Twitter player here. Now, we already know this is going to be a living fossil argument. We've been hearing this from young Earth creationists like since their inception. The idea is that if you have an organism that shows up hundreds of millions of years ago, or even tens of millions of years ago, and it's even remotely similar to organisms that are extant, that are still living, then evolution didn't happen at all to that creature, ... young Earth creationism true. Now I know what you're saying. What about stasis? What about stabilizing selection? What about punctuated equilibrium? What about the fact that we've been talking about this exact thing, quote unquote, living fossils in evolutionary theory, like for decades? Put a pin in it. Let's hear Eric out first.
They find horseshoe crabs that are supposedly 450 million years old in the fossil record. When you compare the fossils of a horseshoe crab that are supposedly 450 million years old to a modern day horseshoe crab, guess how different they are? None. Guys, no evolution in 450 million years. Darwinian evolution didn't work on this guy.
Now, obviously, I didn't do any funny editing to that. I'm gonna funny edit a lot of the ones moving forward because we just simply can't sit through that dry of a video, even if it's 54 seconds, without some Vine booms. But can we appreciate just what an incredible misunderstanding of evolution Eric Hovind actually has? I mean, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So, okay, what is evolution first? Well, evolution is a change in the allelic frequency within a population over time. Change over time. So you might initially think, well, Eric Hovind is right here. We should expect that all populations should change over time. And this is true, but allelic change doesn't necessarily equate to like whole-scale morphologic change. That morphologic change requires a couple of different mechanisms of evolution to be at play. The mechanisms of evolution that we teach to freshmen at my university are mutation, right? The raw source of new alleles, errors in DNA replication or protein synthesis that cause some kind of permanent change to an organism's genome. And if this occurs in the sex cells, it's going to be inheritable. Gene flow, which is the exchange of alleles between two different populations that can interbreed. Natural selection, which is put very simply just differential reproductive success within a population of organisms. And genetic drift, which is the random fluctuation of alleles within a population just due to the way that genetics works. Eric Hovind seems to think that for something to be undergoing evolution of any kind, there must be large-scale morphologic change through geologic time. And when that happens, that is a great example of evolution, but it is not the only example of evolution. If a population of organisms are well suited to their environment and the environment changes, then, well, they're no longer well suited to the environment because they're still in the condition that was well suited for the previous environment, right? So we should now see directional selection moving towards adaptations that work well for the new environment. If you've got a population of foxes that have medium-length fur and their habitat starts to become more Arctic in nature, we're probably going to see an increase in fur density or fur cover, thickness of their fur, or something that's going to make them more well-suited for a colder climate. In our fox example, we're seeing mutation introducing new variation into the old population of foxes and natural selection. Differential reproductive success now acting amongst those foxes, with the ones better suited for the changing Arctic climate, reproducing more and passing on their genes to their offspring as compared to the original population type. But what if the climate doesn't change? What if it stays the same? well, then the foxes are just gonna kind of live their lives. The population might split. There might be some foxes that move across a river, and sometimes the river dries up and then they can exchange alleles again. That's gonna be gene flow. And then you've just got genetic drift always at play, that random fluctuation in allelic frequencies within a population. Random allelic frequency changes within a population that are occurring over time. They may not have a selective benefit, but isn't that still meeting the definition of evolution, even if that random allelic frequency change doesn't reflect in the phenotype or physical characteristics of an organism? So that's our first part down, right? Eric is creating a straw man of evolutionary theory here, saying that it requires large-scale morphologic change over geologic time when it doesn't. Now, to be clear, large-scale morphologic change over geologic time characterizes the vast majority of lineages in Earth's history when looking from the Cambrian to the Holocene right now. This is obviously the case, and this is what evolution predicted. However, we should see less change in organisms that are subject to fewer environmental fluctuations than we do in organisms which are subject to lots of environmental fluctuations. This is because what is ultimately driving that differential reproductive success and what is actually giving new mutations a time to shine is that change in the environment. So there should be cases in evolutionary history where organisms don't change that much as we're tracing their lineage over hundreds of millions of years. However, evolution would say that they should change some over that vast period of time. So is Eric Hovind right? Did horseshoe crabs change? None. A cursory Google search where all I typed in was horseshoe crab evolution already shows us that Eric is dead wrong when he says that there is no change in ancient horseshoe crabs in comparison to modern ones. Here's a look at the entire group with a bunch of different specific sort of morphotypes through time and space. They even color-coded down here to tell you whether it's freshwater, marine, or like a deltaic mix of the two, and where you can find each one of these individuals. But I wanted to take it a little further, so I searched in Google Scholar horseshoe crab evolution, and we get this fantastic paper that is specifically titled A Speciational History of Living Fossils, Molecular Evolutionary Patterns in Horseshoe Crabs, which I think is about as specific as you can get with regard to have horseshoe crabs changed over time. And interestingly enough, they are very specific here. So they note that horseshoe crabs have an exceptional morphologic conservatism over the past 150 million years, which has led to their reputation as living fossils. So 150 million years. Boy, that's a little bit different than the 450 million years of stasis that Eric Hovind already discussed in his little Twitter video over here.
450 million years old in the fossil record.
But furthermore, they looked specifically at the relationships of modern horseshoe crab species to one another and found that, quote, in any event, the current results show that large numbers of molecular characters distinguish even these most morphologically conservative of organisms. So even if Eric was right and the horseshoe crabs as he presented them was the actual amount of morphologic change, he would still be wrong that no evolution occurred, because here we have evolutionary change over time, a change in the allelic frequencies in given populations that led to speciation of these various different modern horseshoe crab species as compared to their ancestral parent species.
None.
So one, evolution allows for stasis, and stabilizing selection is a kind of evolution, even though it's slow and not really directional. But two, there is no organism that has maintained a legitimate, unchanging population ever. And this is what most people mean when they say that organisms are constantly evolving. Luckily, the comment section is very uplifting. There are a lot of friends of the channel and just folks in general who are dunking pretty hard on Eric. So we have Jackson Wheat, who says, Jesus Christ, dude, put in the bare minimum of research effort, please. Jackson is asking far too much of young Earth creationists. And you guys should make sure you subscribe to Jackson, because he's doing a video like entirely on living fossils that should be coming out here soon. Prophet of Zod comments, Answers in Rocks comments, RJ comments, Buff-Cheeked Gibbon comments. I do love Buff-Cheeked Gibbon. They're a lovely person. Cal comments, Robert Kirby III comments, and of course we do see Julia Norris with the exact image that I saw when I just Googled horseshoe crab evolution. It doesn't take a genius to suss this stuff out, but of course Eric isn't looking for truthful content that is informative. He is looking for indoctrination content that indoctrinates. Now, some of you out there might be thinking to yourself, wow, this is a little bit uncharitable, Gutsick Gibbon. Maybe Eric Hovind has other content that isn't bad like this, and you're probably just cherry picking some of his particularly bad content. Surely one of you out there is thinking that. So let's continue to look at what he's got. Of course, we have a Wendell retweet, which Wendell is a completely different story. Wendell is a mess, and I won't deign to talk about him here on this channel any further. Uh-oh, we have another video. This one's called This Fish Debunks Evolution, and it's about the coelacanth, like the most well-known living fossil out there. But maybe it'll be different.
The coelacanth used to be the index fossil for rock that was 410 million years old. Well, not long ago, they discovered the coelacanth is still alive. If it's still alive, it certainly can't be guaranteed to be the index fossil for rock 410 million years old.
Well, it's a good thing that we don't use index fossils to glean absolute ages, isn't it, Eric? We use radiometric dating. But, tell me more about the coelacanth.
And when you examine the fossils of the coelacanth and the living coelacanth today, guess how much evolution took place on the coelacanth in 410 million years? Keep in mind, they say that humans evolved from apes, in just a couple million years. So we went from ape-like to human in a couple million years. 410 million years, the coelacanth hasn't changed at all. It's exactly the same as we find it in the fossil record.
So the earliest coelacanths are thought to have shown up in the Devonian, so I just Googled Devonian versus modern coelacanth. And they're pretty different. The body plan certainly is conserved, but that is not the same thing as no evolutionary change, which is what Eric is saying is going on.
I just got bamboozled once again.
2 videos, both about living fossils, both displaying a severe lack of understanding of what it is that evolutionary theory actually says. But I'm sure if we keep going, things will get better.
According to the old Earth interpretation, and according to the evolutionary interpretation, this fossil alligator would be somewhere between 54 and 37 million years old. This one's from Germany. Now, when they examine the crocodile from somewhere between 37 million and 54 million years ago, they notice something. It hasn't changed. It hasn't evolved in that many years, in that many million years. There's been no change. It hasn't gotten a little bit better. Evolution hasn't done anything to the crocodile in over 30 million years. It's the exact same.
I mean, this one we don't even need to get into because he doesn't even know the difference between a crocodile and an alligator, or how to spell alligator. Mercifully, this is the last living fossil video, and we're going to get into some different stuff here soon. I guess I should mention that during the Mesozoic, especially during the Triassic, there were a lot of pseudosuchians, which are like crocodilians and crocodilomorphs and like things that look very similar to all of those guys. And he just neglects to mention all of the diversity and evolution going on there. But none of that really matters because I don't even know if he'd be able to recognize the differences if he had them in front of him, since he doesn't know the difference between an alligator and a crocodile. I don't even study those guys and I can tell the difference. So there are a couple of tweets here. There is a crib from GenesisMovie.com with Georgia Purdom in it. He does the whole Descent Against Darwin here in this clip that is really poorly edited. Lest we remind you here that the Descent Against Darwin was largely non-biologists, and also in response the scientific community spurred Project Steve, which is a list of people who agree with evolution, who accept evolutionary theory, who are biologists, and like have a name that's either Steve or a derivation of Steve, and that list is greater than the dissent against Darwin. There are more biologists named Steve who accept evolution than there are big S scientists who don't. So just keep that in mind moving forward. We do have this clip, which is a little bit funny.
One of my big struggles is the number of churches and seminaries that are embracing God and evolution. You can't take both sides. That just doesn't work. You can't take the God side and the evolution side because the whole point is they don't go together.
I'm ready to drink tonight. So I will drink until next morning. Thank you.
What kind of warped reality do you have to live in to say something like this? I mean, truly, this is emblematic of someone who could have only been raised by someone like Kent Hovind. Like, to Eric here, I guess evolutionary theory is like this genuine villain, and everyone who accepts it is either stupid and deceived or like genuinely kind of evil. That bit at the end there is especially telling. The whole point is that they don't go together. I think Eric genuinely thinks that evolutionary theory was cooked up specifically to run contra to religion, forgetting, of course, or not knowing, I guess, that Charles Darwin was a Bible-believing Christian, not only when he went on the voyage of the Beagle and collected all the data that supported evolutionary theory, something he sat on for years, but also for a very long time after On the Origin of Species was published, he remained religious. It wasn't until later in life, and due in part to the problem of evil, not evolutionary theory, that Darwin became like agnostic or an agnostic atheist. As always, I find it incredibly offensive that young Earth creationists will just sit idly by and accuse the many evolution-accepting religious people of the world of being like heretical or dumb or like blind to God's word or something along those lines. Like, all because they don't share the same interpretation of Genesis as he does, something that pretty much every Bible scholar out there will tell you is not meant to be taken literally. You know what I think, Eric? I think that your interpretation of Genesis is wrong, and I think it's kind of just because you're not listening to God giving you all of these signs that you can, in fact, accept the reality around you and stay religious.
Yeah, well, if you had a closer relationship with God, you would know that. It's actually, like, pretty embarrassing. I wouldn't really admit that to a lot of people if I were you.
That's about all the Eric Hovind that I can stomach for the day. I'm sure we'll revisit his Twitter account at some point. Hey guys, again, it's me, Gutsick Gibbon, from several weeks later, interjecting just to let you know that Eric Hovind did in fact end up posting like 3 or 4 more of those exact videos, but with different living fossils. So things have not improved. I hope you had fun with this. I had a good time. It was a nice little break from work. And if you like what I do, you can support me by liking, commenting, and subscribing. That's free. But if you want, you can take it a step further and like become a Patreon member. You can do that by following the link in the description. And in the meantime, my gentle, of course, very modern apes, please do take care of yourselves.